I've now officially moved on to my first official 2021 game, which is The Medium, a Game Pass Xbox exclusive. And this one, for Game Pass, I almost don't care. I don't care about my interest level on Game Pass. If it's an exclusive game or if it's a new, it's free. It's free in quotes, so who cares? I'm going to try it out. I'm typically not a huge horror guy, but it's free, so I thought, why not? And it looked a bit different, so I downloaded it, and I will say my first game of 2021 is a huge disappointment. And this is another game, man, I wish so badly that I had recorded this at the time, because I think I had some really great observations, and now I'm afraid I'll have forgotten them all, and this may just come off being oh, this game sucks with no validity to it. But I'll try to remember. But I forget this game even more than I did Ghost of Tsushima because I didn't like it. But I don't know, man. This game, it feels like they made a walking simulator. This is my experience with the game. It felt like they made a different game, and what they wanted to do was, if you're familiar with games like What Remains of Edith Finch or Gone Home, I feel like they were like, let's make a game like that, but third person, and it'll be horror. And then at the end of it, when they were done, they were like, oh no, this game sucks, we don't like it, we better add some things to do, it's too boring, people are not going to like it. Or maybe someone was like, you got to make this a different game. And so what they did was, instead of remaking the game, because they can't due to budgetary reasons and time wise, they were like, let's just sprinkle in random bits of interactivity throughout the game and hope people don't notice that wasn't the case. And so what ends up happening is you just periodically, so let me walk you through the game first. So I couldn't even watch the intro. This is another reason. This is another game like Control. I don't typically do this ever because I'm a story guy. But if your game doesn't grip me, I can't sit through it anymore. So Control, even though it was my favorite game of that year, I skipped every cutscene in that game. I hated the storyline. I found the characters to be really bland. This game starts off with an interesting little thing, but then it gets boring really quickly, and I was not into it. And so you are what the game says. You're a medium, and you start off in this house, and this whole sequence, the whole opening sequence, should have been cut from the game. When you finish the opening sequence, which I'm going to talk about more in a second, it goes into the opening credits, and the opening credits are cool looking, and then it goes into the actual game, and I think that's where the game should have started. I don't know why. The intro almost seems like someone said, hey, you need to throw in an intro to this game to set it up or something. Like that also seemed like a last minute suggestion where someone was just like, we need to train the player better, or we need to have more story or something, because the actual start, after the opening credits, that feels like the real opening of the game, and I think that would have been a much better way to start the game, because everything before that is pointless anyway. It was so boring and had no reason to exist, and they could have gotten across all the story beats in later on anyway, in the what I call the real opening of the game. Anyway, back to the fake opening. You're in this house, and immediately I was turned off. Just the controls are just stale, and you have to basically you can't do anything in this house. And I thought wrongly that this game was actually going to control like the game Control. I thought it was more action based. I didn't know much going into this game. I'm trying these days to ignore as much as possible going into everything, movies and games and everything. I try to go in blind because I want to be surprised. So I had my own expectations, I guess, and I thought, from what I'd gotten from peripheral things, that this game was going to be more like not an action-based game, but I thought it was going to control like an action-based game, but it was going to be horror. But it's not. It's very slow and very wacky, and you just kind of walk around from room to room, and you periodically will see these tiny microscopic white dots that you can barely see, and that means you can interact with an item. And then I would have played this game much longer if what happens is when you press the interact button, the camera changes to like a first person mode on like let's say you're looking at a bookshelf. You're walking by a bookshelf, you'll see a little white dot, you press the button to interact with it, then it goes first person, then you're looking at a closer view of the bookshelf. Now you can see individual books, and you can move your cursor around and look at more things. But once you examine something, let's say you see a spine of a book, you tap the button, and then she goes on this huge monologue of describing what you're looking at, and you're locked. You can't move, or you can't leave the screen. And so when she's going off on these paragraphs of thoughts, I wanted so badly to be able to keep exploring while she's reflecting. If she's like, oh, Mr. Bartleby always did love his books. He would collect them when I was 11 years. Like, you have to sit, you have to just sit there on a blank screen just listening to this stuff, and it made me just skip it all because I just couldn't stand the fact that I had to just wait in that screen. I wanted to keep walking around while she does that, because some of the environments are so big anyway that she could say 10 hours worth of dialogue before you reach the destination. And in this house, it's just it's just nothing to do in it. So you're just walking around, and you have to just sit there on each screen, listening to her say these things without being able to do anything. And it just drove me crazy. So I ended up skipping all that. That's why I started skipping stuff early on, because it wouldn't let me walk and think at the same time. And then within the first 5 minutes of the game, I got stuck because the little white dot that's supposed to show up when you were going around didn't show up for me. And your first objective is to find a tie clip, which brings me to my first big complaint of the game. Whose idea was it to start off a horror game, or any game ever, and your first objective is to find a tie clip? Like, I almost could not think of a more boring first objective if I tried. If someone paid me if someone said make the most boring introduction to any video game ever, I couldn't think of a more boring intro than this game. Like, you're just walking around from room to room, being forced to listen to her think really boring thoughts without being able to move around, and you're looking for a tie clip. I fed a cat. I went into a dark room. I think I did that in the house. And you have to do everything, like, it's just so boring. And so I ended up being in this house for close to an hour trying to find this tie clip. Turns out it's in this room I'd gone into 1,000 times. It's in a very tiny, tiny, tiny little box, and the little prompt didn't show up. And this happened to me a couple times into the game where the prompt didn't show up. Like, the button to interact with something didn't show up at all. And so that's why I kept missing it. And I've heard other people having this experience as well, so I'm not the only one. So I finally find the tie clip, and then you finish the first intro area. Then you get these intro credits, and then what I call the real game starts, and that's where the game should have started to begin with. You just go to I don't know. You go to this hotel, I guess. I don't know. By this time, I no longer knew what was going on story wise. I completely stopped paying attention, but you continue to explore this place, and again, it just feels exactly like when you play like an Edith Finch type game, a walking simulator type game, where you're just walking around an environment, getting environmental storytelling by pressing the examine button on a bunch of different things, and you slowly learn about the world through boring text. And again, had I been in the mood for that, maybe it would be my cup of tea, but I wasn't in the mood for that. I wanted to actually do something. I wanted some horror to happen. And then, randomly you have to push a garbage dump, like a garbage bin, over to a place so you can get up and reach something else. And like, that to me is an example of like, oh, hey, this is boring. We better make the character be able to do something. Like, let's have the player be able to interact with something. Oh, I know, let's make it so you can push this garbage bin around. It seemed like it was not part of the actual game's design. It seemed like it was added in later on. You finally get these powers where you can actually become like the medium, and there's things where like you get this shield ability so that you can like this like crazy force field goes around your character so you can walk through bats or like flying creatures and stuff. But that also felt like they added it in. They were like, oh no, we need to have some kind of action element. What should we do? It's like, let's just have this shield ability. Like it just felt like it had nothing to do with the game or the medium or like the character. It was just like, let's just have her have a force field thing, and you can only use it in this specific moment, and it only helps in this specific scenario. So it just felt so added in and forced. It didn't feel like a mechanic that you would kind of go to often or like use in multiple ways. It was like it was created specifically just for that one thing. It would be like if you had a game where one of your superpowers was that you could strap on skates and skate on ice, but there's only like one ice rink in the game and one instance where you have to be able to skate. And so you're like, oh, I can finally use that power I have where I can skate. Good thing I have that power that I use. But it was so... And I know you use the ability more than once in this game, but it just felt so forced, where it's like, hey, look, there's a thing you can do. And that's why I keep saying it felt like the programmers went back in the game and the designers went back to the game after the game was finished. And they were like, okay, we need to sprinkle out key parts where action in quotes take place, and so let's give her a force field power that allows her to walk through hallways that are infested by bats. Like it just made, I don't know, it was really stupid. And then you have the whole split screen thing where it's not as cool as I thought. I thought I actually had the wrong impression of it. I thought what happened was you could walk around the world, and at any moment I thought you could switch on a different kind of mode and you would instantly be in the other world. So there was kind of two worlds being played simultaneously, but I didn't know it was literally split screen. You see both characters. I thought you would be able to switch it on almost like Legacy of Kain, where you could see the dead world and the live world. But I was hoping it would be on one screen, like you could just instantly swap back and forth. Instead, it's literally split screen vertically, and you have the left and right screen, so you have two characters that you can see at the same time. You're the same person, but they move at the same time. And again, the way in which you use this multi-world thing, and it looks terrible. It's like running at 30 frames at best, probably less, and it just looks bad. It does not look good. So like the prowess that they were saying, they were boasting like this could only happen on Xbox Series X. It's because it's only machine powerful enough to do it. But it looks so bad that it's like, who cares? But like, there's a puzzle where it's like, okay, in one view, there's a staircase that's deteriorated, but on the other view, there's stairs there, but you can't actually go on them because you're stuck in this like split screen mode, and then. Once you reach that, you can kind of tether away from the actual person you are and run around in the spirit world where the stairs are there. But like it almost is like you basically every time you reach a point in which you would need to use that power is the only time where you use that power. Again, it's almost like the skating rink thing where it's like, oh, I can't go forwards. I wonder what I do. Oh, I guess I should go into spirit mode now for 5 seconds and get around this thing. And it just seems so pointless. Every time you needed to use something, you had the ability to use it. And it just made the whole game feel so mundane and pointless and not creative or challenging. But then there was a challenging part, which was you have this focus mode you can use as a medium where you can see things that aren't really there, and you get told you have it in the first 5 seconds of the game, and then they don't ever use it again until like hours into the game. Like I think you use it maybe once or twice other than that, but you use it so few times. Again, going back to the skating rink skating things where it's like there's such a specific moment for each of these things, and they're so spread out that I actually forgot that I had that power, and I was stuck forever on this one puzzle where I need to get behind this bookcase, And it's because I needed to use that power to see this tiny little detail that you can barely notice. And it was so obtuse. Like the solution to this puzzle was so obtuse, in my opinion, that I don't know who could have figured that out just naturally. Like it just seems so dumb to me. I can't imagine the average person not being stumped there. I had to look on YouTube to figure out how to get past that. And all the comments were, thank goodness this video exists. I had no idea what to do. It just was so dumb. I hate the puzzle. So I have really nothing positive to say about this game. I think the design is tacked on. It truly feels like there was just no design until later on. And it feels like they wanted to make a different game. It feels like they wanted to make a walking simulator, and someone forced them at the last second to be like, quickly, you need to make a game that has some kind of interaction in it. And so everything just feels very tacked on, very useless, very pointless to the actual game. From what I played, there was zero action. There was no horror element at all. I stopped playing when this creature was chasing me, and I know that sounds like a cool moment, but it's not, because it suddenly turns into Crash Bandicoot, where you're running towards the camera and this thing is chasing you, but the game is so slow and controls so clunky that during this one bit of action, it is so aggravating and so frustrating. I don't even know what I was doing that would make me fail the running sequence. You're running away from this guy, and if you don't run away fast enough, I guess, he catches up to you and it's game over. But except I kept losing, and he wouldn't catch up to me. He would just it would just show the cutscene of him catching up to me, even though he was still far away from me. I don't know why it was failing me. I only tried it twice, and I was like, I hate this. I'm not into this game enough to give this a third try. So I stopped playing there, and I uninstalled the game immediately. So the medium, I give it a pass. Do not play that game. Pass on the game. Don't waste your time downloading it. I did not enjoy it at all. Maybe if you are in the mood for a super slow, not scary, in quotes, horror game, if you want a walking simulator kind of thing, maybe look into it. But for me, it was not engaging at all. It did not stimulate my brain whatsoever. It was not pretty to look at. It was not fun to play. It was bad to control. Really had very few things. Almost none. I honestly can't really think of a single appealing thing to say about this game. It was not for me at all. So that's my thoughts. It was a bummer way to start 2021. Hey, thank you very much for listening to this clip from my audio blog. If you've enjoyed that and want access to the full episode, head over to patreon.com/CooperBebo. I'm an actor, writer, and producer of film, television, and video games, and as such, I like to talk about all of those things as well. I post new episodes every week where I talk about anything and everything that I feel like, as well as updates on my projects I'm working on. It's a lot of fun. Would love to see you over there. If you know of any games I should play or something I should watch, just head over there and let me know. Thanks again. Bye.